Let's be honest, when I say the word budgeting, what pops into your head? Probably a giant, boring spreadsheet, right? But what if I told you that spreadsheet could be a company's secret weapon or its biggest weakness? Today, we're going to look at how businesses are ditching those old, broken budgeting methods for something way more powerful and strategic.
But first, we have to ask the question that probably haunts every finance team out there. Why do corporate budgets fail so often? I mean, you spend months building them, and by the time March rolls around, they're already pretty much useless.
And the answer? It's surprisingly simple, but it's a huge deal. Most budgets fail because they're designed to look backward. They're based entirely on what happened last year, not on what's happening right now or what's just around the corner. And in a world that changes as fast as ours does, trying to drive by only looking in the rearview mirror, well, that's just a recipe for disaster.
So let's dive right into that. Let's talk about budgeting's one big, fundamental flaw. It's a structure that can literally trap companies in a cycle of doing the same old, inefficient things over and over again.
This flawed approach we're talking about, it has a name. It's called incremental budgeting, and it's the default method for most companies, for one reason. It's easy. But that simplicity, that's exactly where all the problems start.
So, what is it exactly? Well, think about it like this. Imagine you're planning this year's vacation. If you used incremental budgeting, you just take what you spent last year and, add 3% for inflation, and you're done. It's fast, it's simple, and it makes one giant, dangerous assumption that last year's plan was basically perfect. And, that's where the trouble really begins. And this super simple approach leads to three massive flaws. First off, it creates that cycle of inefficiency we mentioned. Any waste from last year just gets copied and pasted right into this year's budget. Second, it encourages something called budgetary slack. You know what this is? It's that classic use it or lose it mentality where managers rush to spend whatever's left in their budget so they don't get less money next year. And maybe worst of all, it creates total strategic blindness, leaving the company completely exposed to sudden changes in the market.
Okay, so if incremental budgeting is the problem, what's the fix? Well, our first alternative is a pretty radical one, zero-based budgeting. The name kind of says it all. You start from a big, fat zero and have to justify every single thing.
Yep, ZBB is the radical reformer. Let's go back to our vacation analogy. Instead of just adding 3% to last year's trip, you start with a totally blank sheet of paper. Every single dollar, from the flight to that morning coffee, has to be justified. It forces you to ask that really tough question. Is this expense, is this activity even aligned with our goals anymore? Now, as you can see, the process for this is incredibly rigorous. First, you break the company down into clear units. Then, each of those units has to develop what are called decision packages, which is basically a business case for every single activity they do. And here's the crucial step. Leadership then ranks all of those packages based on what's most important to the company's strategy. Only the top-ranked activities actually get funded. Nothing is sacred. And that really gets to the heart of it. ZBB is not for the faint of heart, It's a powerful, disruptive tool that you bring in when a company really needs a deep financial transformation, like a major cost-cutting push or a complete strategic reset. It is designed to shake things up and find those inefficiencies that have been hiding for years. But what if you don't need to tear the whole house down? What if your goal is just to make your current operations as lean and efficient as possible? Well, for that, we turn to a different method, activity-based budgeting, or ABB. Think of ABB as the efficiency engineer. It starts with a specific goal, like, say, increase customer retention by 10%. Then it asks, okay, what activities actually drive retention? Maybe the answer is 5,000 support calls and 200 customer check-ins. ABB then funds the exact resources needed for those specific activities, tying every single dollar directly to an outcome. Now this slide right here, this is the key to understanding the difference. ZBB asks a really fundamental, almost philosophical question. Should we even be spending this money? ABB, on the other hand, accepts the goal and asks a more operational question. What work do we need to do to achieve it? So you see, one is all about strategic necessity, and the other is about operational efficiency. All right, so we've covered what to fund. But there's another huge piece of this puzzle. What happens when things inevitably change? Because both ZBB and ABB can still create a static one-year plan. To get truly agile, we need a totally different kind of tool, the rolling forecast. This one is what I like to call the Agile Navigator.
Instead of a fixed budget that runs from January to December and gets more and more outdated every single month, a rolling budget is always looking 12 months ahead. It's a living, breathing document that's constantly updating to reflect what's actually happening in the real world.
So here's how it actually works in practice. Let's say your forecast starts in quarter 1. Once that quarter ends, you don't just look back at your performance. No, you drop that quarter from the front of your timeline and, this is the crucial part, you add a new quarter to the end of the timeline. Your forecast horizon literally rolls forward, forcing everyone to constantly think about the future, not just the past.
Okay, so we've laid out a few different tools for our strategic toolbox. The big question now is, which one is right for you? This is where the real strategy comes into play. This chart really helps map the right tool to the right job. If your goal is a huge, aggressive cost transformation, you need the disruptive power of ZBB. If you're focused on just making your existing processes better, the efficiency focus of ABB is perfect. And for any business operating in a volatile market, a rolling forecast isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a survival tool. Hey, even that old incremental method still has a place, but really only when your world is incredibly stable and predictable.
But here's the real pro tip, the secret sauce, really. These methods are not mutually exclusive. The smartest organizations are using a hybrid model. They might use simple incremental budgeting for stable, predictable costs like rent, but then apply a really tough ZBB review to their marketing or R&D budgets every few years. And then they layer a rolling forecast on top of all of it just to stay agile.
So I want to leave you with a little thought experiment. Take that core idea from zero-based budgeting and just apply it to your own work for a minute. If you had to justify everything your team does, every project, every expense, from a completely blank slate, what would you keep? And what uncomfortable but maybe necessary truths might that whole process reveal?